First of all, I salute everyone who takes part in the Palestine solidarity campaigns and in the protests on campuses and elsewhere. I think you're doing a very important job, and I really thank you on behalf of all Israelis and Palestinians. I think you're really acting in our best interests. My name is Assaf Talgam. I'm a member of the Communist Party of Israel, known by its acronym MAKI in Hebrew. I'm the managing editor of Zo Haderekh, which is the Hebrew language weekly published by the Communist Party. It's one of the main media outlets of the party, alongside the Arabic language El Ittihad. I did not plan on becoming a journalist or pursuing a career in journalism, but I thought that I had some skills in writing, and that maybe I could use them for the benefit of the party. And I started off by writing some news reports about political activities I was taking part in, covering demonstrations and other activities at the grassroots level. And somehow I became more and more involved in the newspaper, and eventually I started working as a reporter for Zo Haderekh, and eventually I worked my way. I think I was always left-leaning to some degree. My parents belonged to a social democratic party, which is generally pro-peace, but it's still a Zionist party, so I did not come from a communist family. And I think I was radicalized somewhat during my time in the army as a soldier. In Israel, all 18-year-olds are conscripted into the army for a period of 3 years. And during my time in the army, I became more aware of the occupation and what the Israeli army is doing. I served as a soldier during the 2014 war on Gaza. That was the last major assault on Gaza preceding the current war. And my role was to document Palestinian casualties. So I had this big sheet in which I had to record the names, the gender, the age of those killed, and whether they were combatants or civilians. And I just remember my shock and surprise that so many of the casualties were not involved in fighting in any way. They were elderly people, women, children, and I think that's when it really dawned on me. And I think my process started there. And I joined the party only after finishing my military service. And I became acquainted with the party through its student organization. It's not easy to be a communist in Israel, and it's not easy to be a journalist in Israel. Journalists in Israel are facing a lot of pressure from working in a dangerous zone, obviously, security-wise, but also facing censorship. The press in Israel is not entirely free. Only recently, the Netanyahu government decided to crack down on the Al Jazeera network, and it banned it from working and broadcasting from Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories controlled by Israel, because Al Jazeera did not portray the war and the Netanyahu government in a positive light. And other journalists working in Israel are always under this pressure. It used to be mandatory for all papers to go through military censorship before publishing their editions, their printed editions. But we have stopped abiding by that rule. And so far, we have had no serious problems. Other papers do sometimes go through censorship. Only recently, I remember an article about the practices of brutality against Palestinian prisoners that was published in Haaretz, one of the major Israeli newspapers, and half the page was just blackened by censorship. And they just left the black marks that the censorship put over the article, they left them there in print, just to show the readership what censorship looks like and that it exists. When the war began, I remember it was very tough. Going out in the street distributing our newspaper, it was scary. I mean, a lot of people, they would see our headlines on the newspaper and they would immediately start screaming at us, even threatening violence. But that has improved. I think in recent months, people have been starting to wake up and realize that the war is also against the interests of the Israelis. Yeah, this war is just an extreme waste of human life and resources, and it isn't improving the security of Israelis. It isn't helping us liberate the hostages taken by Hamas. It just the only ones it serves are Netanyahu, his allies, and the capitalist war profiteers. So I think people are starting to realize this and have become more receptive to our messages of opposing the war, calling for immediate ceasefire. Even if it's only for their own reasons and not because out of solidarity with the Palestinians or objection to the occupation, it's an important development. As communists, we believe that the first and foremost thing is class interest. And we believe that there is a lot of common ground between Palestinian and Jewish workers, as workers being exploited by the capitalists, by Israeli capital, by foreign capital, even by Palestinian capital. And we believe that there is ground for a common workers' struggle against the occupation, against capitalist exploitation. And as part of that, we believe that the road to peace goes through the establishment of a free and independent Palestinian state alongside Israel, with East Jerusalem as its capital, and respecting the rights of the Palestinian refugees to return to their homeland. We're an avowedly anti-Zionist party, and we oppose the war on Gaza. We're the only party to do so. And we're consistently in opposition to the Israeli Zionist governments, be they from the extreme right wing, as Netanyahu's coalition is, or from the supposed opposition of liberal and conservative parties opposing Netanyahu personally, but in fact endorsing many of his policies, including the war. I think that this war is a disaster for both Israelis and Palestinians, and it's dragging us all down into this pit of bloodshed and hatred. And I really hope we'll find a way to stop the war and to start rebuilding from there, rebuilding solidarity between the peoples, and starting on the road to peace, to a stable, just, and lasting peace. We have to work against the current. I hope that our work allows people to, those that are interested in critical thinking and willing to try to find out the truth for themselves, that it enables them to do so. I think it's an illusion that social media is sort of like this public space and very democratic and everyone can say whatever they want. I think this is an illusion because social media is in fact controlled by private corporations, yeah, very big private companies. And it's not an equal ground. It's biased in favor of their interests for profit. Yeah, I mean, it's full of advertisement and commercial content, and it's very hard for independent journalists, which are not supported by big money, to actually go through that and make our messages go viral. That is not to say that we should give up on social media or not try to improve our work on social media. I think we should, but I think it's dangerous to maintain the illusion that we can actually compete with the big money on social media. There is some merit to the old-fashioned concept of going say to a demonstration or just standing on the street corner with a piece of paper in your hand. And it's a good way also to develop conversations with people. You hand them out the paper and they ask, well, what is this? And you can start to explain, why are you handing this out? What are you saying? Why is this different from the other papers? I think it's a very good political conversation starter. And it's really something that we have and the big media corporations don't have. We have the people, we have community organizing, we have activists willing to do this. So I think that's one of our ways to fight back. We have to be careful and responsible. We have to conduct ourselves in a way that will not harm the paper or the party, that we cannot be prosecuted for what we say. On the other hand, we have not made any political concessions. We maintain our line, our party line, forcefully. We are very direct and clear about our opposition of the war, and that we believe that the Israeli military is committing atrocities and war crimes in Gaza. We don't mince words. I mean, the level of animosity and national hatred between the two sides is just too high to allow for any kind of democratic and state with equality for both peoples. I think even if you would want your final goal to be a unified state for all of Israel, Palestine, with equal rights for everyone, you would have to go through a state of transition in which Palestinians would enjoy independence, and thus for the first time equality with Israelis, and they would have the opportunity to construct their national identity and their national institutions, and only then they could negotiate with Israel as equals. If we would jump ahead to form one state, the current situation, you would only have a very rich Israeli Jewish society, and alongside it a very impoverished, exploited Palestinian society. So also the economic differences between the two peoples in the state would be astronomical. But also as Marxist-Leninists, we support the Leninist principle of national self-determination. And Palestinians do want that. Palestinians do not want to live in some kind of binational, multinational state. They want their own independent country, and they have a right to it. Mm-hmm. Same as the Israelis do. Israelis constitute a nation, and they also have the right to national self-determination. We, in the Communist Party of Israel, we do not maintain that Jews are a universal nation. We think that is a Zionist false consciousness. We think that Israeli Jews constitute a nation that has developed historically through settler colonialism in Palestine. Like other nations were formed, like the American nation was formed over a long historical process of settler colonialism. That does not make it any less valid, any less true. It is a nation. I think some in the US are not so much aware of what is going on inside Israel these days, and some may not even know that there is an Israeli peace movement, and there are people in Israel fighting to end the war and to establish peace, and that some Israelis are even putting themselves on the line and risking sanctions and punishment for taking action against the war. And I think that's important for people in the U.S. to know. Also, it's one of the arenas of struggle, fighting for peace inside Israel, challenging the Israeli institutions from inside. 20% of Israeli citizens are actually Palestinians with Israeli citizenship, what is sometimes called the 48 Palestinians, those that remained inside the borders of the State of Israel after its establishment in 1948. And they overwhelmingly support the end of the war, peace. They demand national equality inside Israel, equal rights for Palestinian citizens of Israel and Jewish citizens of Israel. And they're a very important part of the peace movement. I think your role is very important in generating international solidarity for Palestine and for the peace movement inside Israel, calling for the end of the war. I think the international pressure on the Israeli government is of vital importance to stopping the war. And I think it's already felt also inside Israel. Many are aware of the anti-war protests going on in the US and Europe on campuses and elsewhere. And I think communist journalism, like what People's World does, is a big part of that in raising consciousness, in rallying solidarity.